Hello everybody, welcome back once again to New Millennia here over at our new manufacturing site, and the Weldicle has been expanded a little bit further over to 6, so it's now fully able to reach all the way over to here, and a little bit actually over to the parking station, so I guess this can now theoretically be used to repair vehicles that just pop over here. But we actually have a new vehicle to build today, and I wasn't really there's sort of like two on my list I think that we need. Those are a dedicated welding vehicle, so essentially a vehicle that has some of these hooked up to it, so we can load it up with components and take it to wherever we need to build, and that will make it very easy to put enclosures over the hydrogen processing plant and such, because my ASS is a bit heavy. I'm a little worried about building windows whilst I'm stood on top of them like that. And the other thing, of course, is a heavy lifter. As we saw when the rover was headed over here with resources, it was as low to the ground as a dachshund. So we want to make sure that we actually have a craft that's capable of getting whole tons of materials over to here without having to worry too much about ground clearance and such. And we also, eventually, are going to need something that can actually transport people over here. Well, not over here, necessarily, but over to our, like, actual habitation areas. And that's going to be where things get kind of complicated, because we theoretically also don't want to leave Sycamore units out in the middle of nowhere, so it's going to be a case of we're going to want to bring somebody, maybe more than one somebody's, and definitely a Sycamore lander back to our main area. That also means we can reuse the materials inside of them and such, and it keeps our databases of materials and designs and whatnot kind of a national secret. So yeah, we want to make sure that that's the case, and for that we'll need a very heavy lifter, and we'll also need something that can pick up a Sycamore lander and transport it across the snow and the ice. And realistically, I think the only way that that's going to happen is if it flies, because the terrain not only is shifting quite a bit, but it's also just hilly and vast and difficult to really, like, predict and whatnot, because we Sycamore landers are more or less, the name should be a clue. They're pretty much blown by the wind quite easily. So consequently, we can't necessarily predict where a Sycamore lander is going to be, so that's something we need to worry about. And to that end, this heavy lifter needs to be airborne. And thus far, the only history of an airborne vehicle in New Millennia is the ore drone, which crashed on its maiden flight. So this could get very interesting. I think I would prefer to have a craft that could, like manipulate its thrust so that it's always got thrusters pointing down, but that might be a bit beyond me at this exact moment. So maybe I'll figure that out for our dedicated welding vehicle, which is definitely going to need to be very, like, rotatable and such. But let's get ourselves a landing gear and see if I can't figure this out. Steel plates, that should be easy to grab. I just had a whole bunch of them, so that should be hard. Blip. So I'll make a start on this, and we'll get the, let's see, how do I want this arranged? More or less as long as this whole thing ends up on this pad, we should be fine. I don't think that'll be too big of a problem, so let's just point this one that way. And then, if I enable those, and make sure that our welders are overhead of that, it should pretty much be able to start building it. So this will be, if proof of concept here, if we can get a landing gear built up, then we will know for certain that we can get anything built up. Okay. What does a landing leg require? Let's check. Production. Small blocks. Landing gear. There we go. Nice. Okay. And thus begins quite a build. Okay, so far, so good. I feel like I do need to have a ladder of some kind here, but I don't actually have one small enough, and I'll be honest, I'm looking around here at, like, literal things I've built from the ground up, from dirt, mostly, but I don't think I have the engineering capacity to necessarily go off-book, as it were, with the hardware modules we have, so, yeah. So I will be adding more landing struts, because that one alone is not going to be enough. But we have some doors here. We actually have an interior space that we can investigate with this particular craft, because it needs to be large enough to convey people as well as stuff. So we have 4 passenger seats in here, and that should hopefully be, if anything, more than enough. It's not really exactly much of an interior to look at right now, partially because we're the elements right now, but it should be sufficiently habitable for people to be, like, conveyed in once they land. And we also have a pair of connectors here. We've got one at the back, so this craft can hopefully reuse most of the connectors that the rover uses, and one at the bottom, so that we can have, like, a landing pad and such, which also seems like a smart idea. And, of course, yeah, there we go. It also has a large cargo container, which has a volumetric capacity of 15.6 thousand liters. Now, the rover, for comparison, has 3 of 3.3 thousand liters, and that means that the rover itself has about a 9.6 thousand liter capacity, so that one large cargo container is still like 50% larger than the rover. So this thing should be capable of hauling a ton of stuff, but only once I've actually finished it, so catch you in a hot minute. A little while later, and it's starting to shape up a fair bit more, but as you can tell, the snow's coming in, and though this does have batteries and a solar panel, it does not have very much in the way of power. So I have contorted is literally the only word I can think to describe this scene here. I have contorted the rover such that it can actually meet the connector at the back here. This is a sight. But that should hopefully be enough to actually get this thing's power charging again. Or, I say again, period. Charging at all. Fully depleted in 3 days. Those are all of the batteries on this craft, which is the ones that we're actually interested in, and we're just going to set those to recharge. And that is going to drain the rover very quickly, I'm sure. But as long as the rover has enough power to get back to that connector, we should be fine. I mostly just want to make sure this thing actually has enough power to maneuver it to an actual useful position. But it is looking better. We've got some nice windows in here now, and some lights in the interior, so we can actually, like, potentially see wherever we are whilst we're sat in here and just sort of enjoying the ride, as it were. It's not exactly cozy. It's a bit on the chilly side. We are going to have to rely on the ASS units for that. But that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now, of course, the major thing that this is lacking is any form of propulsion. Right now it is just a box with landing legs. That is it. We're gonna have to make sure that this thing is actually capable of moving itself, and that is going to be entertaining, suffice it to say. How are those batteries doing? Still gonna be about 20 minutes before they're fully fixed up. How about the rover's batteries? Depleted in 14 minutes. Okay, so I'm probably gonna have to, like, have the rover make multiple trips back to that connector to recharge, and then actually have it try and recharge this thing. Because if this thing does not have sufficient power, it is not going anywhere, especially not in this weather. And I think this is mostly going to be relegated to relatively short trips, because the power requirements here are going to be significant. Right, so the charging process is very nearly completed. Actually, it didn't take all that many, like, trips. I figured it would be, like, a considerably greater hassle, but no, more or less just the one trip. Although resetting all of the parts on the rover is going to be interesting. And just while that's been going on, I've added the vertical thrusters. I don't 100% know if I'll need downwards thrusters, but hopefully 4 really big thrusters should be enough to get this thing off the ground, especially before it is laden with stuffs. And there's about 5, I think, gyroscopes in here, so it should be enough to allow it to be maneuvered, and then it's a question, ideally, just getting this to somewhere where we can recharge it for the time being. There will be, like, lateral thrusters coming up, which I think is the next thing I have to add here. But so far, it has occurred to me that I started out with the Recon Rover, which is basically our white transit van inside of the Arctic here. It's not actually white, because if it were, I'd never find it ever again. And this has been our workhorse for the longest time. And now, with side doors, interior compartments, passenger seats, and a cargo container, and all sorts, and especially this shape with the, like, the top of it, with the where the solar panel and the, like, batteries go, I have realized that I have graduated from a transit van to a camper van. I have built a flying, hopefully flying at the very least, camper van. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, really, but let's get the, let's see, you gonna rotate the wrong way? Nope, other way. Other way, if and ye please. Just want to get that out of the way and see if this thing can be lifted up. And it, as I say, it shouldn't have any trouble with that. The only problem that it might have is stopping once it does. And that's hopefully not going to be too big of an issue. But yeah, the Weldicle has been an utter godsend making this thing. And it's not even done just yet, but, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, you should be approaching completion there, because you want to go to the 90s. Actually, you go to 180s, don't you? Okay, let's stop you there. And, let's disconnect the rover, which should be about finished recharging. Let's have a look. Let's see, so battery, 4 minutes, depleted in 7. Okay, yeah, we should be able to, disconnect that. And then let's just set these batteries to auto. How much power do we have? About 9 days, apparently. Okay. So we just want to very gently lift up. Oh, purring like a kitten. Purring like a kitten. Okay. So we can thrust. Okay. Check our landing gear, because I believe they're on auto lock currently, so unlock those. And hey. Okay, now we don't have much in the way of direction just yet. Just want to move it very slightly around. Oh, no. Forwards. Other directions, kindly. Just gotta try rotating this in the direction that I want it to move. Oh boy, yeah, this is why we need lateral thrusters. Oh boy, okay, down. That was a loud crank. We okay? Everything alright? Bearing in mind, this does not have any heavy armor, unlike the rover's front, so yeah, but that is a successful first lift. Hurrah! Okay, so now we just need to add a whole bunch more thrusters. Haha. Okay. Did add a little camera just to the side of the Weldicle, just to make make it a bit easier to tell when it was actually over stuff, because when you're standing over here, it's not actually that easy to tell. And I believe that all of the thrusters are now added, all the lateral thrusters to be exact. So now we should be able to maneuver this over to somewhere where it can get some power. That isn't just like grabbing it from the rover. Not 100% on that, so I guess we'll find out. But let's just switch those over to auto. Okay. About 10 days of power. I don't imagine that's going to be the case for very long. But release landing gears. We now have apparently 2 hours. Oh, I think I had to change some of the landing gears. They might still be on auto. Yeah, there they are. Okay. Need to turn that off. I think. Yeah, off yet? No? Good. Okay. Nope, I just turned it back on. Okay, well done me. Okay, unlocked. And we are up, and more importantly, we are not careening wherever we go. So, now that we have the lateral thrusters, I don't need to worry too much about this having sliding around issues. And it can reach a jolly old speed pretty nicely, because there are 6 rear thrusters and 4 reversing thrusters. So if we can just set you down, just maneuver laterally. Okay, yeah, doing well, doing well. If we can just set you down over here, hopefully you're not too wide for the rover's parking bay over here. Which I think we might be, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna have to move that. Okay. That's fine. That's fine, because, hey, proof of concept, we actually got this thing over here. And although it currently gets about 18 minutes at max thrust, it doesn't actually have to use max thrust very often, so hey, that's something. Okay, so we just need to... That little number beneath my reticule is our altitude above the solid terrain, so if I just come down here. Little easy, easy. And we are landed. Okay. Ha! First meaningful test flight actually successful. Nice! We have the first actual full-blown aircraft for New Millennia. Hey! And I didn't die twice. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. The spotlight on this is very similar to that of the rover. You can kind of see the DNA of the Recon Rover here, but this is actually on a hinge. What that means is we can actually rotate it, so if I am in the middle of some strong weather, for instance, I can rotate this down 90 degrees and use it as a landing light. So that should do pretty nicely. Now, as I say, this thing is meant to be a heavy lifter, currently weighing in at 48 tons. Bearing in mind, I suck at calculating physics, but as near as I can tell, presuming, of course, you have the battery power to run this thing when it's actually having to full thrust for very long, this can actually lift about 140, 150 tons, somewhere in that vicinity, including its own mass, of course. So, hey, that's lovely. And, of course, we've also got the solar panel at the top here. Obviously, it's not going to catch sunlight very well, but it should keep enough to keep the engine running, as it were. Huh. I like this thing. I like this thing. I'm going to give it a nice coat of paint, obviously. But I think this will do quite nicely as our sort of go-to relatively mid-range, I guess. Mid-range transport, as well as our heavy lifter for sending large chunks of iron and such to the manufacturing. But this will not be the end of our airborne pursuits for the time being. We do have another craft to make, of course, and I'm gonna have to get real fancy with that to get that one working, because it needs cargo, it needs welders, it needs to be able to orient itself in whatever fashion we need, and that's gonna be interesting, to say the least. But I hope you've enjoyed from here in New Millennia. I don't... here, let me just... there we go. From here in New Millennia, this has been our first major heavy lifter build, and I hope you've enjoyed. I will catch you all as ever next time. Your eyes are getting heavy. Your mind is feeling clouded. The sound of my voice is relaxing you. You feel an urge to support this and other content I produce by going to patreon.com/lying, where you can pledge and receive fun rewards for your obedience. You will remember to support patreon.com/lying.